a writer of jokes, called me one night after the earthquake. I think you've heard my earthquake joke.
Yeah.
He called me after the big earthquake in California about 10 years, 12 years ago. And he said, I've got a joke for you. I wrote it for, he mentioned some other comedian, but you don't play Las Vegas. You play different places around the country. So I thought you might like it too. And it took him 10 seconds to tell me the story. And when I tell it on the stage, when I started telling it with Perry Como 13 years ago in Las Vegas, it took me 3 minutes to tell it. So I embellish it, on it, and it just makes for a better story. Get in that character that I portray, the Lush. Why the Lush enables me to get more laughs out of a joke on the way to the big blast-off. Well, Terry certainly knows all my material. My daughter too knows all my material because they've seen it so many times. I don't put on a show at home or anything like that. But I do tell jokes whenever I hear a real funny one. I find it very difficult to laugh at another comedian. I'm laughing inside, and I've had people say, what, don't you think he's funny? And I think he's extremely funny, but it just won't come out. I just can't bring myself out. So, some time ago, I saw a young comedian, I say young comedian, I think he's in his 40s, but for the first time, a young man by the name of Freddie Roman.
Right.
I saw him for the first time, as I say, and he had me laughing. I mean, he had me, people could hear me laughing because the man was extremely funny and a delightful comedian, and especially, I liked him especially because he didn't say one blue word in the whole routine that he had, and you don't have to do that, as so many young comedians seem to think they have to do today, be dirty to get the big laughs. Clean from the beginning to end. Yes, he was wonderful. Looking for a job. I want to be an actor. I've always wanted to be an actor. From as far back as I can remember, I think I've wanted to be an actor. If I couldn't be a policeman. And I'd love to be a policeman today. And if my physical condition would let me and my age weren't against me, why, policeman in a minute. Yes, sir. Riding around the cars, and I'd love that. I happen to be a sworn deputy sheriff in 2 different counties in the United States, gun-toting and all that business, the real, not the honorary or special, but the real thing. 59 years old before it happened to me, and I accidentally fell into the comedy, as you know me now, the comedian, the Lush and this, that, and the other. Somebody wanted me to do, wondered, because I was kind of foolish around a little pitch and putt golf course there in Hollywood, wondered if I could stand up before an audience and be funny. He told me he could get me $50, maybe $75 for the appearance. And I said, you get me the 50 or 75, I'll do something to make him laugh. At that time, because it was 2 years that I gave it away at different places, hoping somebody might see me when I realized how well it was going over, hoping that someone might see me who could say, hey, I could use that. And I discovered the character, and discovered how well it was going over by giving it away at different organizations, civic groups and things like that. And once in a while I'd get it, somebody'd say they'd pay me $100 for the evening, or $50 for the evening. And one night I got $300 for an evening, and I thought that was really great, And then after I got going, one night I got $27,500 for one evening for an hour, plus 16 days in Hawaii for my whole family. I was invited to the Comedians Classic, which at one time was the golf tournament in which to play. And I thought if I could ever be invited to that would be wonderful. I'd see all the comedians and everything. So I was invited. Dennis James arranged for me to be invited to it. They didn't know when they'd put me on, and finally the fellow in charge said, look, I'm going to introduce you as the editor of Golf Illustrated, of which there is no magazine. And so I said, okay, whatever you do. And I'll have you make a special presentation. I remember the man's name because it really shot me to the heights. Dr. McMahon. Make a special presentation to him. All right, I said, fine. I'll be ready when you introduce me. Previous to that, in the afternoon, I was standing out at the driving range just in awe of Jack Lemmon, Jack Carter, and all these comedians, Gary Morton, Lucille Ball's husband. Excuse me. And 3 men came up. They represented the Greater Greensboro Open. And Dan Rowan and Dick Martin and all. And so when it was all over with, they said, "Thank you very much. It's very kind. We're here to try to find some comedians to come to our tournament." I said, "I see. Thank you." Then I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if I were big enough to be invited? Well, that evening, after I went up and did my thing, an actor, stuntman, was sitting there, and he said, "Are you kidding? That guy's never had a drink in his life." But that was wrong, because I have had drinks in my lifetime. I went right on through the whole routine. I didn't make the presentation. I didn't do anything, you see, because I was loaded. I didn't know where I was. That was the idea, you know. But trying to act like I wasn't tight, but appearing as though I were tight. And they gave me a standing ovation. Every comedian in the world was there of any importance. As I went by Jan Murray's, I went by Gary Morton's table, he said, "I'm going to tell Lucille about you. I'm going to tell Lucy about you." I said, "Thank you, that would be nice." And Jan Murray said, "I'm going to be using that material the rest of my life." I said, "So will I hope." And immediately, these three men who had represented the Greensboro Open came rushing over to my table. I was sitting there with Dennis James and Mickey, his lovely wife, and Terry, of course, was keeping food on the table by working at the telephone company. She couldn't go with us. This was in San Diego. And these three men came over and said, "Mr. Brooks, would you come to the Greater Greensboro golf tournament? Would you like to play in it?" I said, "Yes, if you invite him as your master of ceremonies," pointing to Dennis, which he did. Dennis has known Perry Como for many years. Perry Como was there. He introduced me to Perry Como. Dennis, knowing of my comedy and knowing of Perry's appearances throughout the country, especially Las Vegas, said, "Here's a guy you could use, Perry." And Perry reached over and grabbed my beard and said he could sure use me, couldn't he? Meaning, because he didn't know what Dennis meant, really. Then I appeared with Boots Randolph, Bobby Goldsboro, Floyd Kramer, and Glenn Campbell on the show that night. And it was the following Monday that Dennis got the call from New York, from Perry Como's agent. Said, "You got a friend, he has a beard, an old geezer that does an act or something." Perry said, he wondered if he said, "Yeah, you're talking about Foster Brooks." And he said, well, I don't know what his name is. Perry didn't know the name, but he wondered if he'd go into Las Vegas with him in July. Well, Dennis said, "Well, you have to talk to him about that." So it was arranged, and I talked, and everything was settled, and I went there. I think it'll be 13 years ago this coming July. And spent 4 weeks with him there at the International Hotel, now the Hilton, then 2 weeks at the Harrah's in Lake Tahoe. The following year I did the same thing, but while I was with him at the Hilton, the Suma Corporation hired me, and I was with them for 10 years. Most I ever made, largest check I ever had in my life. And I bought a home, and I've been offered over $1 million for it. And I said, good evening, and oh my Lord, for heaven's sake, you know, look at that poor man, you know, and all. Well, he'll never get another job, and why did Mr. Hope call him? Well, I just apologized for being intoxicated, you know. I didn't expect to be called, and I've been drinking all day, and this, that, and the other, and whatever came. It's all up there, but I don't know. I never know how it's going to come out, you know. And Princess Margaret asked me when I had the pleasure of meeting her, says, "What do you do?" I said, This was before. Mm-hmm. I said, I suppose you might call me a comedian. She said, "Oh, really? And what do you do to be a comedian?" I said, "Well, I'd rather have you wait and see. I'd rather not tell you right now, because you'll be surprised when I come on the stage." And that was on a Tuesday, I think, and on the following Saturday, they put it on British Broadcasting. But all week long, I was in awe. I'd look up the announcements day in and day out, all through the day. Bob Hope's picture and only mine of this big show he had. And they'd always say, "And watch out for that American comedian, Foster Brooks," you know. Then it went on the air, and then the next day I couldn't get out of the car when I went to the golf tournament without the help of the Bobbies, because before nobody asked me for an autograph. But it was really something the next day when we went out on a golf course. Then I went over another 6 weeks later to be on a talk show, there were agents there wanted to represent me there in that part of the world, and I have no interest in going over there and starting a new career. But there was one particular agent there who represented somewhere or another the royal family, and they wanted me on November 9th, 2 years ago, November 19th, 2 years ago, for a command performance before the royal family. I went back to my hometown. I left there long ago. I roamed the bluegrass in the fields. You could almost see it grow. When I left home, I told my friends, my mom and dad, goodbye. And now that I've returned once more, I want to stay there till I die. You're lucky if you live in Kentucky, down where the bluegrass grows. You're lucky if you live in Kentucky. It's the sweetest place on earth I know. Down where the love is a little bit stronger. You're happy-go-lucky and live a lot longer. You're lucky if you live in Kentucky, down where the bluegrass grows.